Imagine a puffing steam wagon crawling through cobbled Paris in 1769. Now, fast forward to a silent robotaxi weaving through Dallas traffic with no driver in sight. How did a kettle on wheels become rolling supercomputers? The answer begins with a hungry German tinkerer named Carl Benz, whose 1886 patent motor wagon, funded by his fearless wife Bertha, sparked the greatest mobility revolution in history and set the blueprint for every car that followed on Earth. The spark of an idea. The automobile's certified birth certificate was signed on 29 January 1886 when German engineer Carl Benz filed patent number 37435 for his three-wheeled patent motor wagon. Unlike earlier steam curiosities, Benz's machine packed a light 954cc single-cylinder engine, a steel tube frame, and rack and pinion steering. Features so practical that engineers still recognize them today. In late 19th century Europe, railways ruled long-distance travel. But inside cities, people still relied on horses that clogged streets with noise, odor, and disease. Benz's gasoline horseless carriage offered a cleaner, faster future and instantly attracted headlines from Berlin to Boston. A love-powered launch. Success, however, was anything but inevitable. Benz had grown up poor. His locomotive driver father died when he was 2, leaving his mother to stretch every coin for schooling. By his early 30s, he was a gifted but cash-strapped inventor, drowning in engine patents no one would buy. Enter Bertha Ringer Benz, his business-savvy fiancée, who poured her dowry into Carl's workshop and later became the world's first test driver. In August 1888, without telling her husband, Bertha steered the motor wagon 65 miles from Mannheim to Porheim, refueling at apothecaries that sold Ligeroin. Her daring road trip proved the car's reliability, inspired the first brake lining upgrade, and convinced skeptical financiers that personal motor travel was more than a wealthy man's toy. From steam dreams to spark plugs. Long before gasoline became king, the first self-propelled vehicle was little more than a rolling kettle. In 1769, French artillery officer Nicolas Joseph Cugnot bolted a twin-cylinder steam engine onto a timber cart meant to haul cannons at a brisk 2 miles per hour. It was ungainly and short-lived. The boiler needed constant refills, and the front wheel kept hopping off cobblestones. But it broke the mental barrier between animal and mechanical motion, planting the seed for every experiment that followed. The blueprint takes shape. A century later, Carl Benz translated that seed into a viable blueprint. His 1986 patent motor wagon shrank the power plant to a single cylinder, switched steam for liquid fuel, and wrapped everything in a tubular steel frame light enough for city streets. Crucially, Benz tied throttle, differential, and steering into one harmonious package. Instead of wrestling with valves and levers like Cugnot, a driver could guide the car with a tiller-style handle and a single chain belt. The machine whispered a promise that travel could be personal, fast, and eventually affordable. Mass production ignited mobility. Henry Ford delivered on that promise with the Model T in 1908, then lit the afterburner in 1913 by stringing the car along a moving assembly line. Work once measured in workdays collapsed to minutes, and the price tag plunged from 8 months of average wages to little more than 1. The United States paved roads, suburbanized towns, and coined the term Sunday drive almost overnight. Where Benz built dozens of cars, Ford sold 15 million, proving that scale, not novelty, would steer the industry's future. Safety and survival. By mid-century, the automobile had become both freedom machine and public menace. Crashes soared, and in 1959, Volvo engineer Nils Bohlin answered with the 3-point seatbelt. So effective, the company released the patent free of charge.
Ralph Nader's 1965 exposé, Unsafe at Any Speed, then shamed lawmakers into enacting the first federal safety standards. Simultaneously, choking smog over Los Angeles forced U.S. regulators to demand catalytic converters in 1975, welding chemistry into the exhaust pipe and cutting poisonous emissions by orders of magnitude. Fuel squeezes and hybrid swerves. The 1973 oil embargo reminded drivers that cheap gasoline was not a birthright, spurring engineers to chase efficiency. Japan responded most boldly. In 1997, Toyota rolled out the Prius, a hatchback whose nickel metal hydride battery and tiny petrol engine traded raw horsepower for 50-mile-per-gallon thrift. Skeptics mocked it as a science fair gadget. Within a decade, the hybrid template had spread from taxicabs to luxury sedans, saving billions of barrels of crude. Silicon Valley plugs in. The next leap arrived from California's startup scene. Tesla's 2008 Roadster proved lithium-ion cells could push an electric sports car beyond 200 miles, collapsing centuries of range anxiety in one silicon swoop. Software updates soon flowed over the air, and by 2015, the same company was selling Autopilot, a Level 2 driver assist suite that could steer, brake, and change lanes on the highway, foreshadowing a future where code, not combustion, would be the industry's beating heart. Autonomy and the battery frontier. As the 2020s unfold, two revolutions race neck and neck. Solid-state batteries, promised by Toyota and others, tout 700-mile ranges and 10-minute recharges, while autonomous fleets from Waymo glide through American Sunbelt cities with no one behind the wheel. Together, they hint at a closing chapter to the gasoline saga, vehicles that charge like phones and chauffeur themselves, leaving motorists to become mere passengers in machines far smarter and cleaner than their steam-driven ancestor ever dreamed.
Bertha's Midnight Escape. The most daring marketing stunt in automotive history wasn't planned by an ad agency. It was improvised by Bertha Benz in 1888. Before dawn, she whisked her two teenage sons into the patent motor wagon and rattled 65 miles to her mother's house, fixing clogged fuel lines with a hat pin and inventing the first brake lining with a shoemaker's leather scrap. Newspapers devoured the story, and overnight the automobile shifted from laboratory oddity to headline phenomenon. The electric century that almost was. Few people realized that in 1900, nearly 4 of every 4 American cars were electric. They were clean, silent, and popular with city women who disliked hand-cranking gasoline engines. What killed them wasn't technology, but the sudden abundance of cheap Texas crude and Charles Kettering's 1912 electric starter, which made gas cars easy to ignite. A different twist of the market, and suburbs today might hum instead of roar. A patent given away. In 1959, Volvo's Nils Bullen perfected the 3-point seatbelt, then persuaded executives to release the design royalty-free. Competitors adopted it instantly, and the humble fabric strap has since saved an estimated 1 million lives, proof that profits sometimes bow to a higher motive. Software takes the wheel. When Tesla pushed its first over-the-air Autopilot update in 2015, owners woke up to cars that could steer themselves on highways. This invisible upgrade upended the idea that a vehicle is finished when it leaves the factory, turning every driveway into a potential research lab and every driver into an unwitting beta tester.
Today, in 2025, the automobile is shedding its skin faster than ever. Electric vehicles grabbed nearly 30% of global sales last year, and China alone licensed more battery cars than the entire world did a decade ago. Solid-state prototypes from Toyota and QuantumScape promise 700-mile ranges and 10-minute recharges, likely hitting showrooms before 2030. On the software front, cars are morphing into rolling smartphones.
over-the-air updates patch security flaws, unlock paid features like heated seats, and even boost horsepower with a tap on an app. Meanwhile, Level 4 Robotaxis from Waymo and Cruise prowl Phoenix and Dallas, cutting crash rates by teaching LiDAR, radar, and neural nets to cooperate better than human reflexes. Hydrogen remains a wild card, gaining traction in long-haul trucks and steel plant ports where battery weight is punitive. Behind the scenes, battery recyclers such as Redwood Materials are closing the materials loop, melting old cathodes into new ones to dodge supply crunches and child labor mines. Looking ahead, engineers foresee cars that plug into the grid as mobile power banks, auctioning electricity back during peak demand and paying their own insurance. In short, the next revolution isn't under the hood. It's in the code and the current.
Casting headlights down the road. From Cuño's sputtering cannon cart to Waymo's whisper-quiet robotaxi, the automobile's journey is really our own. Every breakthrough mirrors a human craving: speed, safety, status, or simply more time. Yet, the story feels unfinished, as if we're idling at a red light that could flip green at any moment. Solid-state batteries, self-driving algorithms, and circular economy supply chains are lining up like dominoes, waiting for the first push to topple an entire century of gasoline logic. Picture city centers, where curb space hosts charging pads instead of gas pumps, or rural highways where semis glide in electrified platoons that trade wind resistance for watts. The only certainty is that the next chapters will be written in code as much as in steel. So here's the question. When today's toddlers earn their licenses, will they even need to take the wheel? Or will the car itself become the teacher? If any era along this road surprised you, Bertha's Midnight Dash, Ford's moving river of Model Ts, or the silent code now steering robo-taxis, drop your thoughts below and keep the conversation rolling. Which breakthrough feels most game-changing? And what chapters should we explore next? Our channel is stacking a playlist of deep dive tech stories, so fuel your curiosity and queue up another video when the credits fade. Whether you're wrench-handed, code-minded, or just daydreaming about tomorrow's commute, there's plenty more mileage ahead, and you're always welcome in the passenger seat.